I've been fighting my whole life, fighting out of poverty, growing up, fighting imposter syndrome. Someone told me I couldn't do it. I have to do this for me. I'm going to give it everything I can. I don't know how I did it. There was a whole lot that went wrong. This is terrible. Why am I out here? Things kind of really went off the rails. You have doubts. It gets really dark out there, physically and mentally. That's where the wheels really fell off. Now I'm in tears. Everything hurts. What's the point of all of this? Am I good enough? I need to do this for myself to show myself that I'm worthy. But it really rocked my psyche. I have to show myself that I'm good enough. I'm just really stubborn and don't know how to quit. You put yourself in uncomfortable situations, but you go and do it anyway.
How do you train your mind to go on 100-mile races?
You do the little things. It's only hard until it's not. Growth comes from...
Welcome back to another episode. Today's guest is an athlete, a podcaster, and a hell of a runner. This guy is one of the few people to have completed the No Business 100. Without further ado, let's welcome the co-host of the Trail Trash podcast, Garrett Fredrick. How's it going, Garrett?
I'm doing all right, man. Hey, thanks for having me on, man. Like I said, thanks for being accommodating here. So, yeah.
Absolutely, and thanks for being here. I'm very excited to have this conversation with you. Yeah, I mean, you are a trail runner, ultra runner, but before we dive into that meat and potatoes of our conversation, tell me a little bit about you and how you got into running.
So that's a very interesting question because you could argue, and I've been a runner my whole life. Sorry. I was a soccer player. And so you would think, oh, you love running. I mean, that's what soccer players do. You run the entire game. No, I hated it. When it was conditioning day, I was like, man, I might fake a hamstring injury. Maybe my calf starts acting up, something like that. I legitimately did not like long distance running, which, like I said, you'd think. But on our team, I was just always saw the bigger guy, right? I wanted to be the strongest because I was never going to be the fastest. We always kind of joked that I was like a train. It took a whole lot to get going. And once that full head of steam caught, you just get out of the way. So, but yeah, so it was essentially, I kind of made the wrong choice, if you will. So long story short, we got pregnant, my wife and I made the choice of, all right, well, gym memberships are expensive. Running, all you need is shorts, shirt, shoes. Cool, I can do that. That's, I got plenty of that. And then I found out what race fees were. And those are those
Yep.
things, those guys add up right there. So, yeah, it was really, I just kind of did it just to maintain fitness as I got older. And here I am later running 100-milers, trying to run 100-milers, doing all this crazy stuff, trying to squeeze all my runs in. And now it's just part of my identity. But that's kind of how I got into it. A soccer player who hated running, who then became a long-distance runner, and the irony that comes with all that. So.
That's awesome. I mean, I understand how people would see you. It's like if you're a soccer player, you're probably going to run 6-7 miles every game, roughly, right? What position do you play as a soccer player?
So in high school, I was midfield, kind of a combination of defensive mid, stopper, whichever one. We typically had a diamond back, so we had the 4-4-2 kind of your standard formation, right? I was always too slow to be a winger, whether that was left back, right back, or a midfielder. Never really had the top end speed to be a striker, but in my defense, I was too good to keep on the bench. So like, let's put him where he can just stop everything. So it kind of became that stopper role. And then once I got into college, I still kind of stayed in that stopper midfield role. I had a really good head on my shoulders, if you will, so I could see kind of all sides of the field. So I was really good at distributing the ball. But the guys who were older than me at college were older and more experienced. But again, I was a little too good to keep off the field. So they're like, cool, you're fast enough, but you're really strong. Let's put you at fullback. So from my I guess my sophomore year on, I was right back. So, and on our team, it was kind of funny. If you came down my side, you were going against what I would call one of the strongest players in conference. If you went down the other side, you were going against one of the fastest players in conference. So we very much had a pick your poison kind of thing. And I also was a soccer official and did that for a really long time. So I knew how to hide the fouls really well. So one of us was going to end the game with a lot of bruises, and it probably wasn't going to be me. So, but that's the positions I played, I guess, kind of growing up and into college there.
One thing that you mentioned that really was funny to me, because every single person that is in the running discipline feels like, yeah, people said it was going to be like a free sport. It's far from being a free sport. It's just far from it. And
Mhm.
yeah, as you said, race fees is just one thing. For some reason, the amount of running shoes we need, or we feel that we need,
Right,
that's
right. Yeah. It's a very fine line between need and want. And most of the time I'm on the want side and I just okay, cool. I want that one and I want that one and I have a part-time job where we sell running gear and I'm like, "Cool, I get a discount on my running gear now, so give me this one and this one." So
yeah. I was watching a reel on Instagram the other day. It's like a guy said, if you ever wonder how many running shoes is the ideal to have, it is n plus one, and the amount of running shoes you have at the moment, and always you can add one more.
absolutely.
So yeah, it gets expensive. I started running a couple of years ago, and I started with one pair of running shoes. A year later, I had like five.
Mhm.
So yeah.
Well, you've got your speed shoes, you've got your long run shoes. In my case, you've got multiple kinds of trail shoes. You've got your everyday running shoe, you're just kind of daily train. Oh yeah, it adds up quick. Yep.
Recovery shoes, and yeah, all of
Mhm.
them. One thing that really struck me, what made you, because you start running, thinking, so, okay, I need to get in shape. Gym is too expensive. I can start running. Did you right away start going for the trail running, or you dabble first into the distance running, half marathons, marathons, and then eventually you got into the ultra?
Yeah, so I took the pretty traditional approach. First race was a 5K. Then I've never actually raced a 10K. I went from a 5K to a 15K, which is a really odd distance. It's 9.3 miles. Why not just round up the extra point 0.7 and make it whatever? But yeah, so I went 5K, 15K. Never raced a half marathon, and I've never done a road marathon. The only marathon I've done is a trail race. So um, essentially after anything after a 15K, I just took to the trails. And I kind of gravitated toward the trails because I love being outside. Whether that's on pavement, I do it because I have to and it's convenient. Actually, the route that I run every day from my driveway to the end of the road, essentially where it turns into a different subdivision, is 2.01 miles on the dot. So I just run that every day. There's my little 4 mile loop. So, um, but so I do appreciate the road. I do understand that it does have its purpose in training, but I just prefer running in the woods and I'll do it without headphones. I like to listen to the birds. I like to hear the sound of nature around me. And when I go on long runs on Sunday, I call it going to church because I feel at peace out there. I'm not saying I'm one with nature, but I'm connected to something out there. Um, and so I just gravitated towards that after I found out what it was. And a buddy of mine was essentially this kind of how I got into ultras was, hey, there's this race in Arizona. We should go run this because this one guy's going to be there and he's really fast. I was like, cool. Well, I like meeting really fast people. So sure, let's go. He ended up not going. He didn't even run it. So so I was out there all kind of in Arizona all by myself. Well, okay. Well, we're here. Might as well. And that was the Black Canyon 100K, which was what I'll call my first trail race. Um, my first trail race, if you will, was actually a marathon here in Nashville called the Natchez Trace Marathon. There's another 50K in town called the Bellringer 50K. Those were my first two races, if you will, but I used those as training races for Black Canyon 100K. So they weren't necessarily races; they were just paid for long runs that I used to kind of dial in nutrition and all those things on for race day. But so kind of a conventional approach, but also unconventional at the same time, because like I said, I've never raced a road marathon. I've never raced a road half marathon. Um, just kind of jumped right in with the big dogs, if you will. So.
So Garrett, let me see if I understand this right. Yeah. So less than 1% of the population in America have completed a marathon, right? You
So
just
I hear, yeah.
ignore that. Yeah, you ignore that. No, I'm gonna go for the 50K. I'm gonna go for the 100.
Mhm.
I just help me wrap my head around that thing, because again, I ran my first marathon last year and it was one of
Mhm.
the hardest thing I've ever done. But going from running at 5K, running at 15K, and then, oh, you know what? I'm going to jump from 15 to 50. How was that jump? What made you just like, hey, I'm just going to go for the ultra right away?
Someone told me I couldn't do it, honestly.
Uh,
So I've been fighting people my whole life, whether it was fighting out of poverty growing up, fighting bullies all through middle school and high school and all that stuff, fighting for kind of imposter syndrome. Like, do I belong on this college team? Like, I don't fit this position. I don't fit here. Where do I fit? So I've been proving people and fighting people my whole life, if you will. And so when someone tells me I can't do something, it's pretty much, for lack of a better way to describe it, hold my beer, let's go. So yeah, so a buddy of mine was like, hey, I don't think you can do that. Okay, well, game on, challenge accepted, here we go. So now not every race has gone great, and actually I don't know as though any race has really gone great. But yeah, we give it the good old college try. So to answer your real question, I mean, it was hard. Yeah, sure. I mean, I had no idea what I was doing. I still don't know as though I do. I'm not an experienced ultra runner really by any stretch of the imagination. I've only been truly running since 2019. And I actually didn't run any races last year. If you look at my history of running, it's rare that I put over 1,000 miles in a calendar year. Last year I ran maybe 350. 2021, I guess that would have been the year that I finished no business. That was my best year, and I think I did maybe 1,400 miles. So I'm not this 100 miles every month kind of runner. I'm just really stubborn and don't know how to quit. So it's very much one of those things when a challenge is thrown to me, cool, we'll figure it out one way or the other. And it's going to hurt, but we'll be okay. I mean, it's not going to kill us, I don't think. It hadn't killed me yet. So,
yeah, yeah.
but you're right. Yeah, less than 1% or thereabouts has done a marathon. I guess I'm in the 99%. Well, no, I guess I have done
No,
the yeah,
yeah,
I have done the trail marathon. You're right. And I have mad respect for road marathoners. That is a whole different level of hard that unless you run one and run something farther, you get this deeper appreciation for the road marathon. Because trail marathons or ultra marathons, if you will, um, are essentially just a really long eating contest. And what I mean by that is you're out there for so long that you have to make sure that you're maintaining calories. You have to essentially do math on the fly. Like, okay, how many calories are in this pack of Sour Patch Kids? That's my favorite. I love Sour Patch Kids. And am I eating enough? And then you have to look at all this salt intake. Whereas with a road marathon, you've got your set aid stations, and it's not. I mean, you do still have to make sure that you're getting in enough calories, but you're out there for 4 to 5 hours. With a 100 miler, you're doing a whole lot of walking at the same time, and you're out there from 24 hours on up. Whereas with that marathon, it is a consistent grind from the minute you cross the start line. You're watching your splits because a lot of how do I want to phrase this? Most of your road marathoners have dreams and aspirations of qualifying for Boston. That's every road marathoner's dream is I want to run one of the major sixes, I guess they're the World Star marathons. And one of those is Boston, New York, Chicago. I think those are the three in the States.
yeah. And then you have
Um,
Berlin, Tokyo, and London. Yeah,
London, that's the one I can never
yeah.
remember. I don't know why I can never remember London, but yeah, everyone dreams of running Boston, and for that you have to make sure you're hitting these splits. With trail running, you're just out there just, yeah, let's eat this quesadilla. Yeah, I'll take these Sour Patch Kids. Hey, look at that cool thing in the tree. It's a whole different world out there. And so I have mad respect for people that are sitting there throwing down 7-minute splits for 26 miles. That's tough. That's hard. So
Yeah, I don't know how they do that. I have no idea how they do that. That is just like, as you said, mad respect. I feel that for trail runners, it would be more like I'm cruising. I'm just having a
yeah.
good time. I'm just like doing that. And even though a few people that run the marathon might be cruising, they just want to finish it. But a
Mhm.
lot of people are just driven. I just want to either hit a PR or qualify, as you said, for Boston, New York, Chicago, one of those. But
Mhm.
yeah, man. Speaking of run, and again, even if you didn't complete a marathon, you did something even harder, which is like a 50K, like 100K, and 100 miles. So I was just searching. I was looking into the No Business 100.
Hmm.
They've been their race has been what for like 7 years or so, right?
Yeah,
So
it's not a terribly new race, but it's not
mm,
an old race by any means. So yeah.
yeah, yeah. Having said that, right? Under 750 people have completed that race, and you've been one of them.
Is,
I mean,
is
which
that
is
it?
absolute. Yep,
Wow.
yeah, I
Okay.
can, and I wasn't even counting those people who just repeated, back to back years or who knows, right?
Hmm.
But in 2021, you were one of 111 people to complete that marathon, right?
Hmm.
32 hours, 24 minutes.
Yep.
How the heck do you stay moving your body for 32 hours? That you just so you said that all these people who run marathons run for 4 or 5 hours. I can deal with that.
Hmm.
Running for more than 24 hours or even walking, that is a whole different challenge.
Yeah, that's probably the best way to describe it. It's a whole different challenge, and I don't know how I did it. That was my first crack at the 100-mile distance. I really had no goals except just do your best. If you finish the thing, that's fantastic. Get as far as you can. And there was a whole lot that went wrong. Because like I said, I had no idea what I was doing. So we'll go ahead and dive into no business because it is my favorite race of all the races I've run. Brian and Shelly Gages, the race directors, are in my eyes, they're great. They are some of the best people and race directors I've ever come across, and I will sing their praises until I die. Right. Um, but so it's one of the few 100 milers in Tennessee, which is where I live. So it's close, so I don't have to do a ton of travel. That's kind of what really piqued my interest into it. And kind of on the same, going back to the Boston thing, everyone tries to qualify for Boston, right? In trail and ultra running, everyone tries to qualify for Western States, which is for football fans out there, that's the Rose Bowl of trail running. Like if you get into Western States, you're one of 360 people out of 5,000 plus that get into the lottery. So you've got to be picked from the lottery if you don't win what's called a golden ticket race, which is only like 7 races in the state. So it's very hard, and only the top two. So it's not if you take third; it's the top two from one of 5 races or however many races. Like I said, it's not a lot, and no business is not one of those. But it is a qualifying race to get you into the lottery. So that's how a lot of trail runners will pick their races. And I'm probably generalizing when I say that, but I'm also confident when I say that that is how they pick races because that's what we talk about. Well, is it a states qualifier or is it a hard rock qualifier, which is a whole other race and all these things. But so it happens to be a Western States qualifier, which is that's our Boston. So everyone's trying to get in. That's how I pick my races. Um, and it's not far. It's 3.5 hours away, and it's in a beautiful part of the country in Big South Fork, which is northern Tennessee, southern Kentucky. Very rural. I'm a nerd. I love astronomy. It's a certified dark sky out there. So basically, you go out there. There's no lights. You look up and you see stars you didn't even know that were out there. So it really drew me to that area. And then I found out, hey, there's this 100-miler race. Heck yeah, let's go do that one. And so I went with my wife and our dog at the time. And my wife is not a runner. She has no desire to be a runner. She doesn't try to pretend to be a runner. This was actually the first race that she had ever been at. Um, and she had no clue what to do. So we're both just winging it. Um, and I would come into an aid station and she would be there and she's kind of asking how I'm doing, what do I need? We're kind of talking to each other like I'm saying give me this and give me that. And so during those times you get to sit down a little bit. So you do get rest, you do get reprieve. And like I said, you're doing a lot of walking. So it's not like we're running 7-minute miles for 32 hours. That is a whole other thing. And I know that there's people that do that, which just really blows my mind. Um, but so I'm going through this race, and I just happen to link up with this guy who owns an outfitter store here in town, and I know what he's doing. He's doing what is called the no-no, which is he ran the opposite direction of the race before the race started, finished the 100 miles the opposite direction, just to turn around and run it with the rest of us. So he ran 200 miles in 42 hours, I think was his finishing time. Um, yeah. So I happen to know this guy because a friend of mine used to have a YouTube channel and he had interviewed him. So I talked to him. I said, "Hey, Jason, really loved your interview with my friend Jason. Uh, if you don't mind, I'm just going to hang out with you for a bit. My goal is just kind of, I know what you're going through. I'm just going to get you to the next aid station, get you to your pacer. And then, yeah, I ended up running 75 miles with the guy, basically just learning from him as I go. But eventually we split up and I'm back by myself. And there is nothing worse than running by yourself in the middle of a deep, dark woods in the middle of the night. Like it
Yeah.
is the,
Scary.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's when you do a whole lot of walking. But by that time, I guess there's a part of this race where I was a kind of, I don't want to say free, but because my wife had no idea what she was doing, um, I was always worried about her because she had to drive from place to place, and there's no cell phone service up there. So I'm always worried about her while also being worried about myself. But I hit this spot overnight where there's a 50K stretch, so 32 miles for people who aren't good with kilometers, where there's only one aid station that she could get to. And I just said, hey, you know what? Go back to the campsite, which is where the end of that 50K stretch is, and just go to sleep. Like, I will feel a whole lot better knowing that you're not driving, trying to get to this place, like, and you're getting a decent amount of sleep, 8 hours, 9 hours. Set an alarm for 6:30 in the morning. Be at the aid station, which was a quarter mile down the road. We're in the campsite where the aid station is, and I'll just meet you there. So it was actually kind of nice. The overnight part, I could just tune out and just focus on me. So even though I was at this point more or less running by myself, I didn't want Jason to feel like I was mooching off of him. But so I was giving him his space. So I was more or less by myself, even though he was, still a bit away or still right there. Um, and finally, dawn comes up, and I will tell you, there is nothing better than making it through the overnight section. When the sun comes up the next morning, you're a whole brand new person, or so I thought. And it really wasn't that way. Because when the sun came up, I still had 28 miles. I think that aid station's mile 62. So I still had 38 miles to go before I was done. Um, and that's when things kind of really went off the rails. Everything starts to hurt. And if anyone tells you it doesn't hurt, they're lying. Everything starts to hurt. There's this great video that she took. I come into this aid station where she, was awake and waiting for me. Don't do this shit.
You told me how to video. I
Yeah.
believe in you.
Don't do this. Holy shit. And she goes, "How you feeling?" I just go, "Don't do this shit. This is terrible. Like, if anyone tells you this is fun, don't. Why am I out here?" And she's just like, you know what? At this point, she's kind of getting it. She's kind of figuring out, okay, when he comes in, he's going to want this. He's going to want this. And she gets what I need and shoves me out, which is, when it comes to your crew, that's what you want. You want people who know what you need, get you what you need, and don't let you waste any time. They shove you back out there and they get you going. So she does that, and then that's where the wheels really fell off. Thankfully, it wasn't nutrition. I just was moving really, really slow. And she had noticed that I was kind of with this same group of people, and we'd always kind of be within 10 to 15 minutes of each other. So we get to this aid station at mile 88, I think is where it is. And she sees the people that I'm with, but I'm not there. And an hour goes by, and I'm still not there. And another hour goes by, and I'm still not there. And so I am now 3 hours behind of when she expected me to be there. And I come into this aid station 15 minutes ahead of cutoffs. And if they were to look at me and say, you know what, you ran out of time, we're shutting everything down, I'd been like, cool, perfect. Gave it my best. I mean, I'm in tears at this point, just done with it all, Daniel. I'm so done. Everything hurts, right? And I come into this aid station and she comes running over. And I always get a little emotional when I tell this part of the story. And we had a conversation before the race started, and she goes, "How will I know when you're done?" And I'll be like, "You just look in my eyes, and if it looks like the soul has left my body, we got to have a real hard talk." And so if it's medical, that's different. Like, there's nothing that's going to help if I'm sick on the side of the trail and I can't keep it. Like, that's a whole different thing. But if it just looks like I'm not there, you'll have to say whatever it is that you have to say to bring me back. And I need you to do that. I don't care what you say. You've got to bring me back. So I come into this aid station. She comes running over. She grabs my vest. She looks at the aid station volunteers and says, in this vest, he wants this. In this pocket, he wants this. He'll like this. Put some of those in there. And she's just barking orders at people. And looking back, I'm like, they let you do that? Like, and so she looks at me and she goes, is this medical? And I said, no, I just don't want to do this anymore. And she looks at me, and again, a 4-letter word here for the little listeners out there. She goes, sit the fuck down. Yes, ma'am. Cool. Got it. So at that point, I'm kind of like whipped back, like, oh, this is real. And she starts taking off my shoes because I need a shoe change at this point. She puts new socks on. She puts new shoes on. And she goes, what are you thinking? And like, everything hurts. And I just don't want to go any further. And this is the part that always gets me, because our daughter was 3 at the time and she wasn't with us. And she looks up and she goes, there is a 3-year-old girl at home who expects her daddy to finish. I don't know what you have to do, but you have to figure it out and get it done. And she laces up, she ties my shoes, she gets my vest from the aid station workers, and she picks me up out of the chair, literally picks me up because I sat down, which was a mistake. And she walks with me a little bit ways down the trail, leaves our dog there. At this point, the dog is, I'm pretty sure she's over the woods too, just like I am. Walks with me down the trail and just doesn't say anything, but I didn't need her to say anything because at that point, she was there and everything was okay. And we're back moving again. And she goes, all she says when I get to the turnoff to get back into the woods, she goes, I'll see you at the next aid station. Okay. So we're moving, we get to the next aid station, and that's when things just, the wheels came back on, because at that aid station, it's 4 miles to the finish. And at that point, you're fine. If you can just make it to the mile 96, now mine, you can just make it to mile
I mean,
96.
exactly.
Yeah, then you're going to be fine. Right. But at that point, I come in and then I'm smiling, even though I'm fighting cutoffs at this point. So the race has a 33-hour cutoff. And like you said, I finished in 32:24. So like, we're close. Like, there's a point where the sweepers are out. I see them. They're close. But she comes in, she goes, Garrett, you did it. I'm like, it's all celebration miles at this point. Once you can see the finish line, once you can essentially smell it, everything changes. And there's great video that she has of me where I'm just kind of fist pumping and like, yes, we did this. And we got it done, but it was not pretty by any stretch of the imagination.
And you said that aid station was what, at mile 88, you said? Or
Thereabouts, yeah, I think 88,
yeah,
if
88.
I remember right. Yeah.
I mean, again, I cannot imagine how tough, because you're sleep deprived, you're tired, you're being on your feet.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Even if you said, hey, I'm slow, I'm walking, I have some rest still. I mean, it's just like you're being on your feet for, at that point, over 24 hours, over 26 hours.
Mm-hmm.
What was going through your mind, if you remember, and what did you learn about yourself when you were especially mile 70, mile 80, where again you're so far behind, you're losing it, but you need to push to at least make it to that aid station.
You just got to do it. Like, it's very much, and so there's starting to be more research that's coming out, and I kind of fall into this category of people who have mental health issues. And I'm not saying like bipolar and things like that, but people who have depressions and anxieties and all of these kind of things that all of us deal with, and how they're turning to endurance events to kind of cope with that. And so it was very much the only thing that you have doubts. It gets really dark out there, physically and mentally. And I just remember thinking, am I good enough to do this? Like, can I finish this? Why am I out here? All the hours I spent away from my family, putting in these 10-hour weeks of running, and these, like on a Saturday, I'd look at my wife and say, hey, I'm going to be gone for 4 hours today out in the woods running. All that time wasted, is it worth it? Like, what's the point of all of this? Am I a good husband? Am I a good dad? Am I a good son? Am I a good friend? All of these things go through your mind. And the only thing that I could think of was I have to do it because they expect me to do it. They need me to do this almost. Like I need to do this for myself to show myself that I'm worthy of them. Um, and I had depression in high school. I'm not shy about it. And I don't know as though I'm not a doctor. I don't play one on TV. That's my favorite Neil Patrick Harris commercial. I'm not a doctor. I don't play one on TV, right? Um, I don't know as though you ever really get over that. You just kind of learn to cope with it or notice triggers and develop certain habits and things to kind of avoid situations, if you will. Um, I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong in thinking that you could. But so I've kind of always been this am I good enough kind of guy, but it's always a yes I am and let me show you that I am. And it's not necessarily that other people can see that I've run 100 miles. Do you know anything about Enneagrams?
Yes.
Okay, so my wife and I are both Enneagram 3s, which are goal-driven, success-oriented people. But we're Enneagram 3s in very different ways. I could give a shit less about who has seen me finish a race. But if I set that goal for myself, I have to get that done. So I do it for me. I'm very intrinsic with that. My wife was teacher of the year a couple of years ago for our county. That's a big deal for her because she wants everyone else to see how successful she is as an Enneagram 3. But I could care less. So it's very much a, am I good enough? Yes, I am. And I have to show myself that I'm good enough. I set this goal and I have to do this no matter how much it hurts. And it hurt a lot for the next couple, 2, 3 days. I slept downstairs on the couch because I did not want to walk up the stairs. Um, but it was very much I have to do this for me, not for who's watching, not for my wife, not for my daughter. They were my motivation, don't get me wrong. But at the end of the day, it was me out there in those woods. It was me who signed up for this race. It's me who's doubting myself, and it's me who's proving myself wrong.
Yeah, man. I can relate a lot to to your story. I found running actually a couple of years ago just to help me cope with depression, and that's how I didn't run before. Now I've faced episodes of depression in the past. I've been, but a couple of years ago was the deepest one I've ever been, and running just helped me stay afloat. So I can definitely see that. Will that ever be fixed? Would that ever be cured? I guess we are in this range between feeling okay and being depressed. It's just like it's almost like you're never gonna be fully feel like okay, I'm very happy, I'm very fulfilled, but then you are in that range where you battle through with, through your life with that. But another thing that really I could relate to you was that inner motivation and drive that it happens to me a lot where I want to accomplish things not to show off to other people and not to say, oh, I did this for myself, just to prove to myself that I can do it. And then, yeah, I'm worthy. And then I can. And it's weird. It's weird because people feel when I tell this to people that, oh, you're just looking for validation. No, I don't tell it to anybody. It just, I do it for myself for whatever reason. And it has driven me to accomplish great goals, which again, you can always see it as a positive and negative perspective. On the positive side, it drives you to accomplish great things. On the negative side, it could be a torment.
Oh, for sure. For sure. Um, because so I went back for no business again. So the cool thing about this race is every other year it changes directions. And so if you finish both directions, you get a we run this race and we get a belt buckle at the finish. Like it's weird. Like you don't get big shiny medals, you get belt buckles, right? But if you do both directions, you get a special belt buckle. I got to get the special belt buckle. So I actually went back the following year and I did not finish that race. And part of me thinks that's why I didn't run a race last year is because I don't know if I'm still over the failure of not finishing a goal. There were some other things that happened last year that are probably actually better reasons why I didn't, but I never felt like signing up for a race. I never felt like I was good enough to try again. I didn't feel like, not that my worth is tied up in finishing races, but it really rocked my psyche a bit. And I don't know as though I realized how much it affected me until the middle of last year, when I didn't sign up for any races. But yeah, it was bad. As bad as the first year was, last year was a whole lot worse. So no,
Was that one the one that you missed the cutoff like what 12 minutes or so?
yeah, yeah. So, and I think that's part of the part that stings the most is that was a hard cutoff aid station, but the next aid station is a soft cutoff. And so there's a difference kind of between a hard cutoff and a soft cutoff. A hard cutoff is if you don't hit it by X time in the race, there is no chance that you get to go on. You're done. At a soft cutoff, you can, well, you're really far behind. You've got to make up some time, but we're going to let you go. That happened to be a hard cutoff aid station. The next aid station, if I could have made it to that one, was a soft cutoff aid station. But there was no chance that I was going to make it to that next aid station. So what happened when that year was I had too much salt, some poor nutrition choices that I thought were the right nutrition choice in the moment based on just my knowledge that I've gained over my short 3-4 years of running. I didn't account for certain things. And so I had stomach problems. And unfortunately, I could not keep anything down. And so I went 5 hours of expending calories without consuming calories. Not even water would stay down. So like I came to an aid station, they had gnocchi. I was like, that sounds really good. I took a couple bites. 30 seconds later, I'm on the side of the trail getting sick. And so at that point, I was so calorie depleted that I could not physically move any faster than a 23-minute mile. And for the average person to walk, you normally walk at about a 17-minute mile. So add 7 minutes to that, and that's how slow that's how slow we were moving. But again, going back to that, I can't quit. Like I have to do everything I can. I tried. I kept moving, and I don't know why. So we'll kind of talk about an aid station at this race. I came in 4 hours late. My wife is sitting there I'm picking up my pacer. This is mile 60 in this direction. You go and do this little 6-mile loop, and then you head back across a river to finish the race. So you pick up your pacer. There's an aid station there. I'm 4 hours late. And unfortunately, there's no cell service, so I can't even text him and say, hey, I'm puking in the woods. I'm not going to be there for a long time. Get some sleep, and I'll find the car when I get there. We come in, and the doctor's there, because most of your aid stations will have, or most of your races have medical involved. You just have to at a race of this magnitude, this distance with this much stuff that could potentially go wrong. So they'll have plenty of doctors. The doctor's there. Some people had passed me, and they're like, are you okay? Tell them what's wrong. They're like, okay, we'll tell the doctor at the next aid station. So I come into the aid station. Doctor's like, hey, are you my sick kid? Yeah. Yeah. My reputation precedes me. I'm the sick kid. So yeah. So he's like, okay, great. What's going on? I'm like, it's just nausea. Everything keeps coming up. So he gives me a Zofran, which calms everything down. So at least I'm not nauseous at this point, but I'm still so far calorie depleted that I can't even catch up. So my pacer comes over and he talks to me. He's one of my good buddies. His name's John. And he goes, hey, if you want to do this, there's still time on the clock. It will be the hardest thing you've ever done running. And if you want to try, we have to go now. I'm like, all right, John, let's just go walk in the woods. Like, I've drug you out here from North Carolina. I owe it to you to at least walk in the woods with you. So we go and we do our little 6-mile loop. We come back, and we're looking at the time on my watch, the time, the physical time, like the hour of the morning, and what time it actually is, and what time the aid station cutoff is. And we have 2 minutes to get in. And we're walking in, and he goes, Garrett, what's the call? I said, John, there's no point. Like, there's 2 minutes. We're not even at the aid station yet. It's a minute up the road. By the time we get there, they're going to be shutting everything down. Like, I appreciate you coming out here, but there's no point. He's like, all right, well, you gave it everything. Like, you literally left it all out there. Like, there's part of me in the woods. My DNA is in the woods. Like, I left it all out there, right? And so I come in. My wife is sitting there. She gets out of the car. She comes up. And I just start crying because at this point, I just feel like such a failure. So I start crying and she goes, what's wrong? I'm just like, I can't, I'm so sorry that I let you down. And she gives me this big hug and I push her away and I say, I'll see you at the next aid station. And John is at the aid station picking over leftovers because that's all that's left at this point. They're kind of breaking everything down, taking the heaters down and all this stuff. He's just kind of seeing what's left. And I go, John, we got to go. And he just goes, we're leaving? I'm like, yeah, dude, let's go. We're crossing the bridge. Come on. And so we just walked back out there. And it's very much one of those, if I can, I'm going to give it everything I can. You will have to pull me off of that course and say, you cannot go any further, rather than me sit there and wonder, could I have made up that 12 minutes? Could I have pushed just a little bit more? Was the tank really empty? If I had quit with 1 minute left on the clock, I'll never know. But we tried. And the craziest part about trail running is you start to hallucinate. Like, you're so tired, you start to see crazy things out there. And most of it is just shadows, right? So we're deep in the woods. And I just remember John looking at me and he goes, what is going on? And I'm looking up at this ledge. I'm like, John, why is there a bus in the woods? He goes, Garrett, there's not a bus in the woods. You're just hallucinating. I'm like, no, John, that is a school bus up in the woods. Where are the kids and why are they not in? So you just get so depleted with calories and lack of sleep that you just start seeing these crazy things. And so John still reminds me to this day, he's like, Garrett, there's no buses in the woods. You know that, right? I'm like, John, I swear there was a bus. I swear there was a bus. But I would have never got the chance to say I left it all out there if I didn't try. And I can swallow a little bit easier someone else saying, you're not good enough, you didn't make it here in time, we can't let you go, rather than me sitting there and quitting and wondering what could have been.
Yeah, man, I cannot imagine how hard mental, especially for people like us that are very driven. But one thing that kept me in your story was, how didn't you pass out in the middle of the race when you couldn't keep anything down and you are sleep deprived, you're super tired? I mean, your body seemed like it never quit it just like it kept going regardless. Even if you say I was walking at 23 minute mile, fine, but the fact that you kept putting one foot in front of the other one is just mad impressive. And if you add the hallucinations, well, I mean, that's a whole different story. That's a whole different story. uh, and you pay for this, so
Yeah,
so yeah.
I paid literal money to go out there and get sick in the woods. So and to answer your question, I don't know how I didn't. I did take at one aid station, the gnocchi aid station. I did take. I think it was about an hour. I don't know. I fell asleep in a chair, and I think I sat there for an hour. I don't know. I really don't know how long I was there. And part of me now kicks myself in the backside. Like, why did you let yourself fall asleep? That was an hour. You could have finished. But I really think at that point there was nothing that I could have done because my body was essentially just done. Like, there was nothing left in the tank. I sat down. I don't even remember falling asleep. I just remember waking up and looking and thinking, "Oh my God, I've got to go." Um, yeah, yeah. I don't know how, but so I end up getting up. I get up. I get out of the chair, and you just walk. I mean, as simple as it is, but as hard as it sounds at the same time, you just walk and you just try. And you're right, you just put one foot in front of the other, and little steps add up to big miles. And that's the only thing I can say is I just walked. At that point, it's very much mind over matter, and your body will. once you reach a certain point, your body will start to essentially fake signals like, hey, this is an injury. And so that's also one of the hard things about ultra running is this a real injury or is this my body? Because your body will go into flight or fight mode and it's going to say, hey, we can't do this anymore. It's in survival mode saying we can't do this because if we do this, other systems are going to start to shut down and we've got to take care of ourselves. So it's very much is this a real injury or is this something that I can push through just a little bit more? Is this a real cause for concern? Now, there are certain cause for concerns. If you have some kidney failure, you're going to start, or not kidney failure, if you have some kidney issues where they're not working right, you're going to start peeing blood. That's a major issue. Like that is you're getting rhabdo, which is a big disease, a big thing that happens in ultra endurance events. You need medical attention immediately if you start doing that. So if you're not doing that, if you're still sweating, your body is more or less okay and you can push through it. But you've got to know your body well enough at the same time to say, am I okay to push through this? And at that point, my body was just like, hey, you're stupid. And my brain's like, yeah, but we're more stupid. So let's keep going. So,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah, no, it's interesting because when you add everything up and then you realize, yes, it is so easy to feel like, okay, my hamstring or my ankle or my knees or whatever, just you feel that, okay, that's your body telling you enough is enough. And you falling asleep in the chair, I think it was more, if you could reframe it more like a blessing than a curse, because you could have passed out in the middle of the woods and
mhm,
who knows, I mean, for how long. Or it's already scary just to be by yourself in the woods, especially if it's in the middle of the night. I would be
mhm.
very. That's why I don't like trail running that much. Also, I have very weak ankles, so I would just sprain my ankles left and
Sure.
right. But yeah, man, it just I feel like what ultra runners put their bodies to is just insane. And what you say, just peeing blood, I heard I think it was on a podcast, David Goggins, one of his first 100 miler, which it
Mhm.
was on a, I think it was on a freaking track, which is even
Yeah.
more, it's even crazier. He peed at some point like a blood, like a 75 miles, and he continues like, okay, dude. See,
Mhm.
one thing is to try to stay hard and try to be tough and all of that, but another thing is like, you got to be responsible with your body.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and
You only
that,
get
and
one of them. I
yeah,
mean,
and
yeah.
yeah, and how do you find that balance? Well,
So,
in your case, how do you find that balance of, I'm okay, I'm trying to take care of my body, but at the same time, gonna push more? It's a very fine line between pushing your body and really damaging it.
yeah. And if you'd have asked me 6 years ago before I had a kid, I would have done what Goggins did. But now that I have a kid, it's a whole lot different. Um, I don't do as much stupid stuff. I still run my 100 milers. I've got, I go back to make up for my failure this year at no business. I go back in October. Yeah, I still do the ultra endurance events, but maybe I listen to my body just a little bit more than I would if I didn't have my daughter. So it all comes down to just knowing yourself, and knowing you've really got to have a good understanding of your body. And if you don't have that, you're going to put yourself in some dumb situations. Um, you've really got to know. And that's why a typical ultra marathon training block is 16 to 20 weeks. It's not, it's so you can dial in your nutrition. It's so you can learn about your body. It's so you can do all these tests that you do in training, like sweat tests to say, okay, I lost X amount of sweat on this run. That means I need to be drinking X amount of water. And all these things. There's so much behind the scenes that I didn't realize until I had a coach last 2 years ago that really goes into this. And now I would like to think I'm a better runner for it, but yeah, you really got to know your body, know yourself, know when you can push, but also be aware of the signs that your body is actually telling you that this is too much.
Yeah, I mean, I can definitely see how your, I wouldn't say goals, but your mindset change. Okay, now I'm responsible for another life, right? Now
Hmm.
that girl needs to grow up with it. That I cannot put myself in in a position where I cannot even enjoy even my grandchildren in the
Right.
future. In a way, it's like, okay, I'm fit, but then I don't want to be stuck in a wheelchair or just be in bed all the time. So
Right.
I totally get it. And but speaking of that, of that mental aspect, because again, doing ultra marathons are one of the hardest things that you can ever do. Physically, we all know about all the issues, kidneys, all of that. But how? What about the mental part? And I know that we touched it a bit, but how do you train your mind to go on 100-mile races?
You wake up early. I mean, I mean, you do the things that you don't want to do, and I say that, but that's really what it is. Like your alarm clock goes off at 4:30 on a weekday morning because you've got to get up and get your run in, even though you don't want to. You put yourself in uncomfortable situations. So we can actually kind of dive into that. This past weekend, I had a 16-mile run that I had to get done, and I did not want to do any of it, but you go and do it anyway. So little by little, you show yourself, hey, I can do this, which means I can do this, which now means I can do this. And so you stack these little micro wins. And those micro wins give you momentum. And then you're like, okay, wow, look at how far I've come. Look at what everything I've done. All those 4:30 in the morning runs, all those 16-mile runs where you didn't want to. And when you're out there, it's a whole different thing. Like you have to train your mind. And that's something that is starting to get talked about a whole lot more is the mentality of ultra running and endurance events. Like Ironman. Like I don't know how those people do it. They're swimming and biking in the morning, biking and running in the evening. That's a whole different. You want to talk about mentality. I don't know how those people do it. I just get up and run. They get up and bike and swim or swim and run and do all these transitions and all these things. That's a whole different beast that I thought I would do one point, and I'm never going to do that. So, but you do the little things to build the momentum. So when race day comes and the dark thoughts come in, you're ready for them. And sometimes, Daniel, this is going to get real dark. Sometimes I'm glad when they show up. It's very much that Jocko Willink thing where he says, "You had a hard day, good, it made you better." And it's very much like that. Cool. This was a hard run. Good. I did it anyway. Or it was raining today. Good. I still went and ran. I can do it in this situation. I can do it in that situation. So you really put yourself in very uncomfortable situations. So when you get uncomfortable, you're comfortable knowing it's going to happen because it's going to happen. You just have to do everything you can to get ready for it when it does show up.
Yeah, man, that I feel that's key. And the way that you frame it is like, yeah, obviously having these small wins, waking up at 4:30 in the morning without hitting the snooze button, it just going on around 60 miles. I don't like it. I don't feel like doing it today, but I'm doing it anyway. But the fact that you feel it's like, you know what, I'm glad that I had a struggle, because we can only grow from when we struggle, when we have like a hard time, whether that is a depression, an injury, like a tough run. When you come out of that on the other side, you have grown so much from the mental aspect. And I think that any athlete, elite athlete, will tell you that it's not that their talent that have gotten them so far, but their mental aspect.
Mhm. Growth comes from discomfort. You know, what's that phrase about ships? Ships are built in safe harbors, but that's not what they're meant for, or something like that. I'm sure that I'm probably butchering that phrase. So whoever said that, I'm sorry. But yeah, growth comes from discomfort, and you don't get any better by being comfortable.
Yeah, yeah, and yeah, but again, as you said, it is hard to be uncomfortable because again it's not comfortable, right? It's just like, but then you just need to accept the fact, and some people are much better at it, and it seems like you can build that. You don't have to wake up at 4:30 and run 60 miles like you do, but if you're somebody who doesn't run, just wake up at 6 and try to run like a mile and trying to do those uncomfortable things. And a lot of people are praising now the cold plunges. Just take the last 5 seconds, 10 seconds, 15 seconds of a shower and just put it cold
Yep. Yep.
and start building
Yep.
that mental whatever strength.
Yeah. Stack your micro wins. And that 5 seconds of cold shower turns into a minute cold plunge. And you wonder how you got there. Well, it started with that 5 second shower that you didn't want to take, but you did anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Garrett, you are a very impressive human being. Honestly, I don't even. I still can't comprehend what running 30 whatever finishing like after 32 hours is. I've been enjoying this conversation quite a lot. But as a closing question, right? I have like, what was the most, let's say, valuable lesson you have learned in the past year, and why?
That's a really good question because there's a lot of ways that I could take that. I think what I would boil it down to is it's only hard until it's not. And then you look back and you realize that you made it through it. It's not as bad as you think it is, and you're gonna be okay. Inhale, exhale, take a second, reassess, and it's gonna be okay. I promise you, it's gonna be okay. I've had to tell myself that a lot the past year. So,
Yeah.
so and it's just very much just a daily thing. It's just very much it's gonna be okay today. And like you and I talked about with the depression, it's gonna be okay today. And it's kind of very much I'm not necessarily on a sober journey. I just haven't drank in three months and 20 days. And so taking from them, just don't drink today. What you made it through today. Just don't do it today. One day at a time, I think is their phrase. So today's gonna be okay. You're gonna be okay. Just get through today. Worry about tomorrow.
Yeah, there's a very nice reminder that I needed. I mean, I need almost like daily, where you have the storm and it's like, try to make it through the day, and it's so hard to stay on the present and focus on the present rather than worrying about tomorrow, next week,
Hmm.
in a month. But what you said is very, very true. It's like you're gonna be okay, and we tend to suffer more in our heads than in reality. We tend to make it more of a big deal, and then after we finish it, you know what? It wasn't too bad.
Hmm.
It
One
wasn't
of
too bad.
one of my phrases that my wife now says is, um, "Does it affect the roof over our head? Does it affect the food on our table? Does it affect the money in our paycheck? If it doesn't affect one of those three things, I probably can't do anything about it anyway. So it doesn't need my time and energy and worry."
Yeah. No, completely agree. Completely agree. And again, very, very nice reminder for whoever's listening that you control what you can control, and the rest just accept it, and just your action and how you react to things, and that's it. I mean, sounds easy, but it's very, very hard to do for sure, and
Oh,
we
very.
all struggle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, so Gary, again, total pleasure to have you on the podcast. Learn a lot of what it means to be an ultra runner, the mental aspect and the physical aspect. If people want to listen to your, because I mentioned that you co-host a podcast with
mhm,
other ultra runners. If you want to
mhm.
listen more about the whole journey, whether it's from a nutrition standpoint to the whole experience, where can they find you?
Yeah, so you can just find us on pretty much wherever you get your podcasts or wherever you're listening to this one. Just Google the Trail Trash Podcast, TRAILTRASH, 2 words, podcast, and you'll find us there. So it's me, Jason Atnip, and John Horner. They're two of my closest friends. But yeah, we've kind of talked about all of our running journeys. The first, I think, 58 episodes are just us just bantering, just talking trash to each other, doing a lot of race recaps, doing a lot of things like that, being real, and just saying, hey, this is what running really is to us. This is how we do these things. This is what this means to us, that kind of stuff. We've started doing interviews, so we're bringing on a bunch of people. You mentioned nutrition. We just had a nutritionist on there. I learned so much that I thought I knew that clearly I didn't. So we're really trying to broaden that and give you guys, whoever finds it, something of value there, to rather than just three guys talking shit to each other.
Yeah. Awesome. Awesome. And yes, once again, pleasure. And I will be rooting for you this October on your way back to the no business. Hopefully, that's the opposite direction now, right?
Correct. Yeah. So I got to go. I got to go and finish the direction I didn't finish last time. So
Well, yeah. And not finishing, I think it was after what, 75 miles, right? Roughly?
yeah,
The
they're
first,
about, yeah.
well, not a failure whatsoever. You would do more than I would even, me or 99.9% of the population would have done. So praise to you for enduring and keep pushing and still have the courage to go this year again and say, I'm going to get that special buckle for the both ways.
Yeah. Thank you, Daniel. I appreciate it.
Well, it was a pleasure, man.